This excerpt from the public television program, The Piano Guy, is brought to you by the Roland Corporation. You know what I would like to do right now is walk you through the tune, I Left My Heart in San Francisco. It's a great tune. Obviously, Tony Bennett, it was really his signature tune. Kind of an interesting side note, his accompanist, Ralph Sharon, who's one of my all-time favorite piano accompanists, is who actually brought him the tune originally and ended up being his biggest hit. But what I want to do in working through this tune is not focus on all the little stylistic interpretation things, but instead get right down to the meat and potatoes of what it is to get this tune learned and kind of underhand in your head, which is just the melody line and just the chord changes. And to do that, we obviously use a lead sheet. So let's go ahead and start with our right hand. Now, this melody is really pretty darn simple. It's really a pretty lyrical melody, but it's not that hard to play. So let me just play a couple measures. You know, and if you've never read music in your entire life ever before, you probably ought to, you need to get to that very basic step of Every Good Boy Does Fine and some of those things. But quite frankly, even if not, if I could say, this starts on an E, I'll bet you could probably hunt and peck it if you knew the tune well enough just by singing. So don't ever be afraid to let your ears guide you. Sometimes I think we get the cart before the horse and think that the reading's more important than the playing. And boy, that's just not the case. So use the reading as a guide to help you get something underhand. In San Francisco. Now you know I play instead of sing. And on and on. There's nothing in this that's really going to trip us up. You need to work your way through it and just kind of get it underhand. It's not a tough one. Let's shift on the other hand now to do our chords. Now, with our left hand, we're going to start out, and I'm going to give away some of these chords. I'll tell you what they are and I'll play them. But before I do that, I want to give a little caveat and tell you, I really think it's best when you're learning chords to get chord diagrams in front of you, whether that's in a book or an electronic chord finder or on the line somewhere, however you can find it. Do it like guitar players do. You know how they always read those little fret charts when they're playing chords? Well, in piano, I suggest doing the exact same thing for your left hand. And you just need to knuckle it under and get some of those things learned if you haven't learned them yet. The great news, and a bunch of you that see me all the time already know this, once you learn a chord, you've really got it locked in for the rest of your life. So it's not like you're starting from scratch on every single tune. You really can come into most tunes with a good base of knowledge, and then your snowball just keeps getting bigger and bigger as you learn new chords. So moving on, here we go. Starts out with a C major 7, then goes to an E flat diminished 7. That's maybe one you haven't had before. That one's not so standard. So it's then do D minor 7 into G7. Sorry, I'll do it in root position. I'm going to move the melody line up an octave so I can get my fingers out of the way. Excuse me. G7. Back to the C major 7. To G7. There's a B minor. Actually, I added a 7th. You could just play it a B minor. To E7. Okay. So really, and then it just repeats. This tune is kind of an odd one from a structure standpoint, that it doesn't ever really go to a bridge or a whole second section. It just kind of is an AA. It just kind of plays through a couple times. So I'll tell you what, I'm just checking to make sure I got through all there's another E flat. I think I did. We got through all the chords. Let me just play a couple measures of this for you, kind of in tempo. And I'm very intentionally not going to do anything sneaky. I'm not going to use the Ralph Sharon lick, some of those things you remember. That's something you can do later once you've really got it underhand. But for now, I'm just going to use the root position chords, just exactly like you'd look them up in a chord finding book of some sort, and I'm going to play a one-note melody with it. I think you'll find that it sounds pretty darn good. I'm going to go ahead and keep the melody line up one octave from where it's written, just because I feel like playing it up there. So here we go. then on and on. It'll kind of repeat itself through the second part of the tune. So there you go. That's a pretty darn easy tune to get underhand. The chords aren't really, number one, there's not a ton of chords in the tune, and they're not particularly tough chords, and the melody's pretty straightforward. This is really a beautiful one to focus on, just the niceness of the tune, which is a really gorgeous melody line. So have fun learning to play San Francisco and getting down these basics, and then once you do that, you'll really have a good platform set to start adding some tips and tricks on top. Have fun playing. This excerpt from the public television program, The Piano Guy, has been brought to you by the Roland Corporation, international manufacturer of the finest keyboards, organs, and digital pianos. To find out more, log on to RolandUS.com.